Welcome to the Reawakening Ancient Feminine Wisdom in Pregnancy, Birth, and Motherhood Summit. I'm your host, Nancy Lucina, and today for our last interview, Amber Hartnell will be joining us. Amber is a mystic muse, evolutionary catalyst, and ecstatic conduit who ceaselessly rides the unfurling crest of personal and collective evolution, inspiring connection and innovation in all she engages with. She derives profound pleasure by guiding those she serves back home to their essence, demonstrating how to embrace and dissolve fear and resistance to access the inherent wisdom readily available by relaxing into ourself, which returns us to our natural state of alignment with life. In today's conversation, Amber shares with us the stories of her 2 ecstatic orgasmic home births, how to unravel unhelpful patterns and programming around birth, the art of surrender, intuitive mothering, and so much more. Amber even guides us in a beautiful meditation at the very end that you won't want to miss. Hello and welcome everyone. Today we have with us Amber Hartnell from amberhartnell.com, and I am so beyond excited for this conversation. So thank you for being here with us, Amber.
Oh, it's truly my pleasure. Thank you for inviting me, Nancy. Happy to be here with you.
I want to start by offering you a space to share your story, because I think it's just going to be really powerful for our listeners. You have had 2 incredibly pleasurable and ecstatic birth experiences. So, yeah, what do you want to share with us about that? I'd love to know about your preparation for those, if there was any, what you did during pregnancy, and then how your experience was and what you think led to being able to be in such deep pleasure in the birthing experience.
Great questions. Well, I'll start with my preparation in that case. It was interesting because, obviously as a woman conceiving a child for the first time, growing a child, everything is so new and so foreign, and at the same time so inherently familiar, that knowing of like, my body is designed for this, and yet it's just such new information flooding the senses and the body changing so rapidly. And so, I began to first start to inquire into, how do I want to birth my children? And so first just imagining the birth that I wanted to create for myself, and for my child to enter into the world. And at first really immediately tuning to water birth. Like for me, being a very watery being, and I generally have lived near the ocean for a long time, and feeling that water would be the best way for me to feel really held, and in the fluidity and the grace that would be supportive for birthing experience. So I decided on water birth. But then I started looking into preparation and all the different options, and right away the first guidance that came was, don't read any books. I actually was called not to fill my head with information. The guidance was very, very simple and essential, and it simply said, just empty out. Just keep emptying out of all of your expectations, your preconceived notions and ideas, and just get so present in each moment, become so spacious that you're then available to receive the guidance that will come in each moment, that will keep leading you deeper and deeper into the experience in such a way that you can respond to the inherent wisdom that will be emerging from within. It was so clear that I trusted it completely, and it's really the way that I live my life. So I chose to apply that to a very new and novel experience, yet to maintain the continuum of how I choose to live. So I really actually got to then experience my entire gestation and the labor as a continuum of a way of being that I have been cultivating for quite some time. I mean, decades, at this point. So that was really, there was one book that I read, and somebody gave it to me, and the moment that it landed in my hands, there was a knowing that there was something in that book for me. And so I did read through this book, and it was really the piece that I pulled out of it that became relevant was in regards to Lotus Birth, which is, I don't know if you know anything about Lotus Birth, which is the practice of actually keeping the placenta attached for days until the child chooses to release it. So I had never heard of that before, and the moment that I heard that, I resonated just with the idea of putting choice into my child's hand immediately, the power for them to choose when that relationship with the placenta was complete, rather than the abrupt severing of that connection. So that was what I got out of a book, but really it just kept affirming to the inner knowing So I
Mm.
really, by the time it came for labor, I was empty and available and ready. And there was just nothing in the way. There was no techniques that I was trying to remember, no breathing rhythms. I mean, it was just wide open vessel. And that was
Mm.
my experience of birth, as a wide open vessel, really allowing those currents of creation to just moved through me in such a powerful way that it was obliterating for my personality. I mean, the small self that thinks it's in control. It
Yeah.
was just the most absolute experience of surrender one could even imagine. And yet, because my
Mm.
preparation was all about surrender, I was perfectly positioned to continually surrender with each wave that was moving through, so that they could move through with no resistance. Mhm.
Yeah. Wow. So beautiful, Amber. I love it. I have chills over my whole body listening to you say it. Um, the obliteration of the self. This is something that I have really intuited about birth. I mean, I have a daughter, so I went through my own birth, and I felt that I got to that place of almost that, and then I got a little bit stuck. But I've been intuiting this for a long time, that this really is what the birth process is about, that opportunity to really merge with the creative force in such a profound way that you become completely reborn in the process. And then you're looking at your newborn as a newborn too. So it's just this unity consciousness speaking to itself, right? And it sounds like you've experienced that exact thing, which is just so inspiring. Um, I'd love if you could talk a little bit about surrender, because that's really what I see in you, that you are in this constant state of surrender and allowing the divine to move through you. I know it can be hard to talk about surrender, like you don't maybe know that you've surrendered until you've done it, but is there anything you want to say in terms of how to do that, how to prepare for birth in that way, that you're surrendering on a day-to-day basis? How are the ways that we get in our own way, and what can we maybe do about it?
Yeah, that's an excellent question, and I can certainly speak to it. I mean, I've had so many opportunities to attempt to translate, an experience that seems untranslatable. So I'll
Yeah.
do my best with this. But as I had already made mention to, that my experience of birth was that it was an extension of how I live my life. So there are specific internal relationships and techniques that I've learned to cultivate from a very early age that really started in my childhood and started out of challenge, which, as we were speaking about earlier, that often our challenges are what yield our greatest gifts. So
Yeah.
in the challenge as a child of moving into a situation where I was suddenly then being physically whipped with a belt by my father, which was a startling experience for me initially. But ultimately, what I learned to do in the face of that, rather than to disassociate, to leave and to
Hmm.
contract away from, I learned to actually surrender into it. So essentially, the first time I was being whipped, I would just contract in a ball and wait for it to get over, and it hurt so much. But then
Sure.
I heard the inner guidance simply say, "Let me into the bed." And so I, in that moment, went from contracting in a tight ball to just letting go as much as I could in that moment into the bed. And I noticed that it hurt less. And so I
Mm.
became curious about that and basically use the opportunity to discover, how much more can I let go? How much more can
Mm.
I release all resistance to this experience that I have no control over? It's happening.
Hmm.
So I learned I had no control over the external situation, but I had 100% command over my response to it. So I
Hmm.
learned to, it's a process of melting from the inside out, so that even no matter how intense a sensation is, we can actually learn how to open into it and actually
Hmm.
turn towards it. So I've cultivated this, but what I've over time really recognized that most people struggle with, what gets in our way, is that when we're experiencing any kind of intensity, whether it's physical sensations or emotional intensity, whatever it may be, the tendency for most people is to contract away from it. With the
Yes.
beliefs, the thoughts like, I can't handle that, that's too overwhelming, whatever it may be, right? But it causes a contraction away from, which
Hmm.
creates impedance or resistance in the system. And so then it's like, I use the analogy of water attempting to move through a hose, right?
Mm.
It's attempting to move through a hose, but if you put a kink in the hose, it's going to ram up against that point with an attempt to get the hose to open so the water can continue its pathway. So it's the
Hmm.
same energy, that in my experience, it's shown me that pain is actually just energy with nowhere to go. So it's pain is the energy getting blocked somewhere, right? So we have to train ourselves, and it is a practice because it seems contrary to how we've been wired to move away from pain, right? So we have to learn how to train ourselves first in very safe and more minor situations, right? So maybe you stub your toe or you get stung by a bee, given that you're not allergic, whatever it may be, where there's an intense sensation, you know, rather than contracting, it's like, oh, this is an opportunity for me to practice turning my attention towards it, internally turning towards it, and beginning to move into it and bringing the breath into it. And if you can do this, just be willing to feel everything completely, because that's what it takes, is the absolute embrace of whatever is arising in our experience, right? And so and we can learn to turn towards the intensity and to be with it and to feel the fullness of all of it and keep breathing and keep scanning the body from head to toe to find, where am I contracting? Where am I tensing up? Where am I holding on any level? And the moment that you recognize you're holding is the moment where you're then empowered to release. You have the ability to let go into it, even if it's just layer by layer, which sometimes it is. That process of releasing into. And so that's in birth, I mean, it definitely, it was the most intense concentration of sensation I've ever felt. And yet, because I was completely committed to remaining absolutely present, feeling all of it and actively surrendering into it, what ended up occurring was, for the 12 hours that I was in labor for my first birth, I was in a sustained state of ecstasy. It was just, I just kept expanding bigger and bigger and bigger. So every time that a rush would come through, and I called them rushes because they did not feel like contractions. It was, there was nowhere I thought these intense rushes of energy that would come through, and I would just rise up, and my body would begin spiraling and moving with the energy as I was breathing and sounding. And so the breath is definitely the main way that we can open into and release the energy, but then sound is one of the most effective ways. And you would know this very well as a sound healer, that we are vibrational beings. And so when we're making tones, we're actually vibrating our body. And so you can direct breath and sound into different areas of the body and actually support the opening that naturally wants to occur, because the system always wants to keep letting go, opening, releasing, expanding, right? It's, as you said, it in our own way, and we block it through our fear, our conditioning, that, you know, it creates distortion. So we're just actually supporting the natural process of releasing back into the fluidity that we are as nature, just fluidly dynamic beings.
Right.
So there's a few pieces there that I'll pull through and just articulate. So that very specific process of creating opportunities for yourself to be with sensation. And this could be something like taking a cold plunge in water, for instance.
Okay,
it's one area that I spend a lot of time cultivating the capacity to be in a state of relaxed alertness, right? So it's not just surrender, like I'm just push, right? It's surrendering into a state of relaxed alertness. So that's when the sympathetic nervous system has calmed down and the parasympathetic system is online. So that's we're out of fight or flight and hypervigilance, and then we come into more of the rest and digest, or as I like to say, stay and play, right? So you're actually you're alert, but you're relaxed. So that makes you hyper responsive to the moment. So whatever's happening, you can be completely responsive to it, right? You're closing that gap of impulse and response, which is in birth, you know, because in each moment there's so much information and sensation that's happening within the system, to be able to be so focused on a very fine-grained level of continually tracking the body and diving into, okay, where am I holding? You know, where do I need to let go? Where is the intensity? Can I keep moving into that and breathing with it, let it move through me, and keep opening my body in whatever way is needed to stay fluid and dynamic and with all of that. So cold water is great for that. If you can get yourself into a cold plunge or a cold lake or a river, and the response is going to be, right? You know, that pulling up and away and the connection that happens. So that'll be the initial response. But then in the face of that, it's like, okay, but can I actually now just see if I can let myself melt into this experience and relax? And even though there might be a shiver or a quiver happening, then I can even relax into that. So creating those situations and those opportunities to cultivate that state is key, because it becomes a reference point in the nervous system that then becomes accessible when you're in the moment of birth, where it all comes online, and it's like,
Mm-hmm.
again, the peak of an opportunity to embody these principles in a very powerful way. And I love how you made mention to, with birth being an opportunity to rebirth oneself. I really experienced that well, birth is really, it's one of the most powerful initiations that a woman can experience in her lifetime. And it's
Mm-hmm.
especially first birth, right? It's really an
Yeah.
opportunity for a woman to be initiated into a whole nother level of her power, to
Mm-hmm.
know what she is actually capable of, with that force of creation bringing life into form. I don't know of
Mm-hmm.
anything that's more potent than that. And as
Yeah.
far as an opportunity to prepare oneself in that way, with that level of reverence and honor, that this
Mm.
is really an initiation. And like, I want to know what I'm made of. I want to know what this body is capable of, that it's actually designed for,
Mm.
and so, I definitely recommend that a process of clearing out the belief system. So really letting, through the gestation, at different points, different beliefs will come up, or different patterns that have been
Yes.
passed forward from lineages of information, mother, her mother, right? And
Yep.
so an opportunity to really, the same as with sensation, to turn towards and to become curious about what are these operating systems that are actually running in the background that
Mm-hmm.
I haven't been aware of until now, because I never needed to be, right?
Right.
And so to really to unpack those and unravel them. And often, we can really use support for these. It can be difficult for most people to do this on their own. They need a reflection of somebody that can help them to see themselves more clearly, right? And so
Uh-huh.
reaching out to receive whatever support is needed for that process, but knowing that it's like, I'm doing this because I no longer want to propagate the lineages that have been distorted before me, and the fear and all the distortion around birth and childbirth, because
Mm.
it's become, in general, is not considered to be an empowering initiation. It's something that most women fear because of
Right.
the model that we presented, that it's a terrifying, experience, and has generally become a medicalized procedure
Mm-hmm.
rather than an portal and opportunity. So
Yes.
taking that mind frame point, and so then to do the unraveling and unpacking of, where are my limitations, where am I bound, like what is causing contraction on any level, and use that opportunity to keep opening the system and transmuting that lineage, so that the child you're birthing into the world has a new opportunity,
Mm.
free and clear of so many of the trappings that we had to work through, right? That we're
Yep.
evolving each generation that way, and taking full responsibility for our part in transmuting
Mm-hmm.
the lineage, so that they don't need to be passed on through our children as well.
Yes, so potent. And that was actually one of my questions for you, is how do women deprogram themselves? So in that, you use the word unravel, which I love. So in that unraveling process, is it the same as you described earlier, just continuing to turn toward, and then releasing the resistance, and that's the unraveling process for you with the belief
Absolutely.
systems? Yeah.
A lot different. Especially when we're working with belief systems, it can be often a lot more tricky for most people, I find,
Yes.
and so it's hard to see ourselves clearly often, right?
Mm-hmm.
We've been so influenced by them, and they've woven their way into the framework of how we've organized ourselves, right? And so it can often be very supportive to have someone else there that can support you with that kind of work, right? That
Mm-hmm.
can help you see more clearly what's happening and
Mm.
how it's actually influencing you on different levels, and then to hold you as you're able to then start to move into them, to actually let them show themselves fully, right? So becoming curious, being willing to see what you've been unable to see until now, and then of course associated with that, being willing to feel whatever
Mm.
you've been unable or unwilling to feel until this moment. Because once we see the belief system, we have to be willing to feel everything that's been associated with it, right? So wherever we've been bound and we've experienced trauma or imprints in our life, that we in that moment weren't resourced enough to fully feel it and be with it. So it's like we kind of created a crystallization of it in our body
Right.
in different places,
Yeah.
right? And we form patterns around that energy
Yep.
that gets stuck in the system, and then the patterns tend to loop in our lives, right? And so
Yes.
it takes penetrating through the story of why this is even here, to actually be able to be with and feel the pure raw sensation that's beneath it. So whatever that energy that's been arrested, we have to be
Mm.
willing to feel it entirely, and that's where the unraveling actually happens, is the willingness to feel what's behind them. And it doesn't always have to be doesn't always have to make sense. It doesn't have there
Mm.
doesn't have to be a story around it. It's often I found that when we release the story of why something's even there, and we're willing to just again be with the rawness of it and the pure sensation, then the patterns collapse, and we're that energy is liberated, so it can actually be recirculated in the system again. It becomes transmuted actually, and then it
Yes.
becomes fodder for our growth. So often when we
Yes.
have those pop, when we unravel something, it's like it actually catapults us across a threshold into more energy, more capacity, more comes online. And when we're willing to be with those places that are really difficult, that are painful, that are scary,
Mm.
when we're willing to be with those, then what happens is then we're able to be with life more. No matter what
Yes.
life is giving us, our capacity to be with the full spectrum of life is increased, right? And that's what's required in birth. I mean, I've often
Yeah.
described it that to me, ecstasy is, and I like to say ecstatic birth rather than orgasmic. So even though I
Okay.
did have distinct rolling orgasms in the second half of my labor, it was a sustained state of ecstasy, because to me,
Mm.
ecstasy is a state of being. Ecstasy is not an event, right? It's
Right.
actually a way where ecstasy actually embraces the full spectrum of our experience, right? It doesn't exclude anything. So whatever's here has a right to be here.
Mm.
And rather than denying it, turning away from it, resisting, it's a inherently inclusive. It's enfolding, it's incorporating. So it's just continually growing bigger than whatever's occurring to be able to encompass all of it and to keep collapsing it down into the center, but breathing and opening, receiving it and bringing it in. So it's really giving over to being the breath of life, like letting that breath of life keep moving through us and opening us bigger and broader and wider so that we can encompass more.
Mm. Your words are like poetry for my soul. It's so lovely to hear you speak about that process. I resonate so much. I've learned along, my life that my power is wrapped up in those pieces. Like you said, crystallize. That's my power in there, And even though I want to shy away from it, when I turn toward it, I do incorporate more of who I really am. And after that comes this wave of being bigger somehow, as you say, and you described it so eloquently. So thank you. I want to talk to you about, maybe you could touch a little bit on child raising, actually. How you have two beautiful boys. How have you raised them in a way that you really respect them, as I've heard you talk about this before, as them being masters, them coming in as masters? Talk to us a little bit about that.
Well, the moment that it was with both my children, but I'm just referencing my first birth because it was definitely the initiation. But the moment that I brought him up and I looked into his eyes, I almost don't have any words that can possibly do justice to the experience, but looking into his eyes, immediate knowing of like this being as a master, like that there was just no veil of separation. And it instantly evoked the most profound reverence of me of, wow, show me how I can be of service to you to continue to allow you to stay connected, right? I want to find wherever my limitations are in the face of your reflection so I can keep removing them to create the space, like to lift the ceiling so that you can just keep expanding into more and more of who you are rather than having to get smaller and smaller, which is what most of us had to go through as a child, right?
Right. Yeah.
Limitations of our familial patterns and the cultural conditioning and all of that. So it was a very distinct moment of surrendering into being of service to this being and to really listening. It's like, okay, wow, show me how I can best serve you and support you to stay connected. So, that was a barometer of how I made every decision in the way that I chose to parent. And again, if there's no manual, they don't come in with the manual saying, this is the way to raise this child. And we certainly haven't had models that have come before us that have shown us a way and a pathway. So I felt trailblazer. It's like, okay, I'm going to figure this out, and try different things and see what works, what doesn't work. And so there's, some key elements that I would love to share that were a reflection of that for me and that I really actually enjoyed. And one of them was I found out within days before I gave birth about elimination communication, or also known as body training. Do you know about that?
Yeah.
And I heard about it, like some just resonated for me. And so in the first days after he was born, I was, in bed with him most of the time. And I just started pouring through this book about basically the technique of how to do the infant potty training. And the basic premise of it is that, infants come in and they actually communicate before they're going to eliminate. They will actually give you very clear, distinct signals that are letting you know, I need to eliminate.
Mm-hmm.
But in the Western world, most people don't ever get the chance to even make that correlation because they just slap a diaper on them immediately, right?
Right.
And then so the correlation of when they're actually eliminating and what happened just before then. So, but basically why I chose this was several reasons. One, that I love the idea that it was a choice inherently rooted in profound respect for these beings. That rather than sticking a diaper on them and training them to sit in their excrement, which is uncomfortable, right? Which inevitably would create some sort of disassociation or numbness, right? If you're sitting in your excrement, it's uncomfortable. There will be some level of numbness created, right? To be able to maintain that. So rather than that we're training them to sit in that, and then, a couple, 3 years later, then trying to untrain them through the process of potty training,
right.
a very challenging experience for many parents and humiliating for the children in many cases. It's like, well, this makes sense that that they're actually training me is what's happening, is that he's training me to listen and to pay attention and to maintain such presence that I can be in tune with him and can notice a signal, or actually even just receive the intuition that it was time, right? And then what you do is you start to associate a watery sound with the act of eliminating. So what I did, because we were in Hawaii, so it's warm and baby could be naked comfortably, is I, would put him on a sheepskin on the bed when he's sleeping, and then I would lay some large pre-fold diapers, hemp diapers, underneath him, so that he was just open. So then I could see when he was going, right? And then when he would go, I would start to make the sound, just you can choose any watery sound. So he begins to make the neurological connection between, oh, this is happening in my body, this is the sound that's associated, right? And so I did that for a few days first, and then I began to notice, okay, he does make very distinct signals right before he goes. He kind of goes, okay, it's time. And so he's sort of doing that. Okay. And so the technique is you put them against your back and you hold them under the thighs, and then you take them to the toilet or the sink or outside, as it were, and then you make the sound, and then they go on cue. And so my first time, he was 7 days old, made the signal, picked him up, took him out to the bush off my porch, and made the sound. And within seconds, he started to pee. Oh my God, it worked! And so I was so excited. I treated it like a game. To me, it was just fun, and I got definitely peed on many times. There was many misses, but eventually we did come so in tune that, I would put a cloth diaper on him when I'd go out in public. But even then, I'd still stay connected to him. And so I'd still take him to the toilet. And often, many, many days, it would be that we would use one diaper the entire day, and it would remain dry the whole day.
Wow.
And so then, before he was even 2 years old, he was completely done with diapers, right? He knew where to go. He could go on his own, do his little potty, or he'd let me know if we're out in public. And so we never had to go through that process of training him to sit, untraining. And so that decision also then enables them to stay very connected to all of the functions of their body, right? There's no disconnect between their genitals and the elimination organs. And so if you look at our society, in this culture, a diaper raised culture, I mean, there's so many indications of what disconnecting from our sexuality and our act of elimination has caused. I think some fundamental issues and patterns. So just again, what can support an integrated being to stay fully connected to all that they are, to stay very embodied, to keep their senses very alive. And so another practice was, I would massage him most days, not every day, but most days. I'd massage him and sing to him, and I would just make up these songs, that would just be singing to his body and about the preciousness of his body and how every cell sings, and that I would be infusing him with just absolute adoration, and devotion for him to feel within his system, this is normal. It is normal to feel so completely adored and just revered and absolute devotion, that this is not an abnormal thing, that this is just standard.
Yeah.
This is what it feels like to receive this. And when we've received something, then we know how to give it, right? And so that choice also to put that into his cells and their nervous system. That this is just the way that we are, the ways that we get to love each other and be in these bodies and enjoy this life together. So those are some a few of the kind of the body pieces.
Mm-hmm.
And then as far as I was really curious, I read in the early days to the book, the Continuum Method, I think it's called. Do you know that one?
Continuum concept.
Continuum Concept, that's
Yeah.
what it is, yes.
Yeah.
And I loved the principles out of that I also integrated. One being that we're not projecting our fear upon them. So I
Mm.
was really questioning boundaries, because obviously we need to set boundaries for our children as they're
Mm-hmm.
learning and growing and discovering the world. But I really began to reassess, because I would notice some automatic boundaries would come up that were just boundaries that had been set for me. And I'd
Mm.
stop. I'm like, wait a minute, is that boundary actually necessary? Is that a boundary that I want to continue and pass on? So I was really in that internal inquiry of what feels right. And then as far as giving them a lot of freedom, but with a safe container. So it's like, okay, I'm tracking you, but I'm actually not going to helicopter parent you. I'm going to give you a lot of space to explore your world, but stay really present with you, right? So that
Right.
I'm there if they need. And so I felt like that was another piece, was them getting to feel that sense of like, I have the ability to move in my
Mm.
world without feeling energy constantly, hovering over me and overly concerned about my safety, right?
Mm.
So my youngest child is he's always been kind of a daredevil. I mean, my first child was fortunately very cautious. He eased me in gently, but my second child just came in with this knowing like, I am capable, I am very much in this body, and nothing's going to stop me, right? And so he would, as soon as he could crawl, he began climbing things vertically. He wanted to just get up, up, up. Just watch him. I'd go right underneath him and spot him, and rather than, oh, be careful, right, which
Right.
is a imprint of fear, or that something
Yep.
would happen, I would just affirm. I'm like, wow, I really appreciate the way that you place each foot so carefully, and you really seem to know what you're doing here, and
Mm.
just affirming that he is capable and he's confident. But I'd be there if something were to happen. I was there to catch him, right? So
Right.
those relationships were really, again, getting to unravel our own fear and boundaries, so that we're creating a clear space for them to explore and to feel the roots and the wings, right? That they have solid
Mm.
roots. We've got that, but that they can spread their wings and begin to explore and have that freedom.
Yeah, I love the way you put that. For me, it's all about honoring that natural intelligence of the being, right? And just recognizing that they come in with that. I'm fortunate enough that I also read that book when my daughter was very young. So I began to put some of those things into practice too. One of the things that I allowed her to do was cook with me from a really young age. And I mean, use really quite big knives, and she never cut herself. I just trusted her, but it was really hard when I got around other people, like family members. Then they would be really hovering over her, and that would cause her anxiety. And for me, that created the condition for her to actually cut herself. So it can be very uncomfortable as a mother to live in that way in front of other people who aren't living in that way.
Confronting, ultimately. It is confronting for many.
Yeah.
And yet we make that choice that, yes, I understand that many people might not agree with the way I'm doing things, but I'm being led by an internal guidance that is so
Mm-hmm.
clear. This is what I want to create for myself and my child. So you may judge me. That's okay. I'm still
Yep.
going to choose the life that I'm choosing to create for me and my family.
Yep.
Mhm.
Yep. Absolutely. How have you spoke about as a child you had that internal guidance system. I believe, of course, that everyone has that, but some people have so many other voices perhaps speaking louder above that. What do you say to moms who can't even feel like they don't hear it, you know?
Yeah, well, that is challenging. Again, that's a process. That's not
Yeah.
something that happens overnight. First, there has to be the willingness to hear.
Mm.
The
Mm.
willingness. Often we have been unwilling to see, hear, or feel.
Mm.
What could actually set free. So, starting by looking at what triggers us. Where do we get triggered by certain things, or what are the patterns that keep repeating in our lives, and start there, because
Mm.
that's useful information. It's like, for instance, when there's someone that just triggers us and just activates us in some way. If we take 100% responsibility for our experience, then we can see it's like, oh, it's like that is really irritating, frustrating,
Mm.
whatever it may be. But rather than project that onto you, that that's just your thing,
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to actually use it as an arrow showing me where to go. Like, if I follow it in to where I'm
Mm-hmm.
feeling the trigger, that's where the energy is arrested, right? It's actually, we're manifesting these situations that are basically attempting to guide us into where we're still bound, right? So that we
Mm.
can set ourselves free. And so again, rather than projecting it onto somebody else, like using those moments, those instances to actually dive deeper into ourselves, to find where am I bound, right? And
Mm-hmm.
to, again, the process of even first starting with turning towards. It might not be that you immediately move in towards, but
Mm-hmm.
even just rather than skirting around, because often like we can sense it, but I'm like, I'm just not going to look at it. I'm going to go
Yep.
around here, right?
Yep.
It's in our subconscious, but it's influencing us from the background. But
Mm.
the moment we turn directly towards something, then we become conscious of it, and then we
Mm.
actually have choice. Because up until then, we have no choice, right? It's in
Mm.
the background influencing us. But if we turn towards and name it, acknowledge it, and just see it, feel it from even just the forward stance of turning towards it, then again, we begin to have choice within the matter. We can then slowly start to make our way closer and closer,
Mm-hmm.
never rushing the process. Because a dear sister of mine, Saida, I love this expression she says, I use it often, that we, from profound self-respect, we have to move at the pace of the slowest part of ourselves. So sometimes those
Mm.
aspects that have been, those imprints that were formed through challenge, through trauma, they are very fearful, right? And
Mm.
so they move a lot slower than we
Yes.
do. And so we have to actually, it's that, again, the inclusion, we actually, to be able to hold it with our absolute unconditional love and presence. Like, okay,
Mm.
you have the right to be here. You don't
Yep.
need to go away. I'm not trying to get rid of anything. I'm actually just wanting to incorporate and integrate this aspect. So you're not, again, not trying to get rid of. The
Mm-hmm.
unraveling of a pattern that then allows that aspect to slide back into its right place of integration within us, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's the inclusive process. So first, holding it, being with it, listening to it. What do you need? Like,
Mm.
what quality of energy do you need? What quality of presence? Or is there something I actually need to do that you'll inform me? So that all of the information needed is contained within it. So we just have to learn how to get still and quiet
Mm.
enough to be able to listen and to feel and to ask it what it needs of us in order
Mm.
to begin that process of unraveling.
Yeah.
So it's the
So
best I could
true.
do to kind of transmit the essence of it in
Thank
the form
you.
of joy.
You've done an incredible job. Well, I am looking at the time. I would love I would love if you could guide us in a really brief meditation, because I was speaking before we started the recording about how your voice just has this ability to personally disarm me and really just melt me. So if we could give our viewers that opportunity, I think it would be amazing. And we could end with that. But before we do that, if that's okay with you, do you want to just tell us about any relevant offerings you might have? Are you still doing your embodied resonance calls? Yeah, okay.
Yeah,
I've had the opportunity to experience a few of those, and they're wonderful.
great. Yeah. So that's really my kind of broadest offering because I for groups. So essentially, once a month I lead. I call it the Embodied Resonance Attunement series, and so once a month there's a live call that I do, where it's an hour-long guided experience. And so we have people in 9 different countries in it. And so we come on the call, and if you can't come on live, the recording is always immediately available. But essentially, it's experiential. So it's not just information. It's actually we immediately drop into a shared experience together. So I never quite know what's going to happen, but as a channel, I open up and I allow whatever is relevant for the collective to stream through me and to essentially start to open into new spaces, to develop new receptors so we can experience, a broad range of sensation,
Mm.
to help to light up the circuits that we've all been designed with, but for the most part have remained latent and inactive because we've never really been shown how to access ourselves as broader, more multidimensional beings within this human body.
Mm.
And so, yeah, there's a wide variety of experiences and tools and that come through in these sessions. So anyone that is called to join us for these, it's a subscription, a monthly subscription, and it's eventually going to expand into something more. But
Mm.
for now, that is the offering.
Lovely.
Mm.
Thank you.
And
Um,
you can find that on.
yeah, we'll have your links to your website and everything. We have about 7 minutes of your
Oh, perfect.
time. Would you want to guide us in something for maybe any women who, I don't know, might be listening, who are preparing for pregnancy, might have some fears come up, or even some fears around motherhood, whatever might be coming through for you? I'm going to mute myself.
Beautiful. Yeah, I feel that we just an experience of um, cultivating greater spaciousness and connection with ourselves as that conduit that allows that current to flow all the way through us. So I invite you to close your eyes and to allow your awareness to shift from being externally referenced to being internally connected. So begin just to scan the body and to notice where you're at, without judgment, without needing to change anything. Becoming aware of the quality of your breath, of whatever sensations may be present in your body in this moment. And just start to feel yourself arrive more fully inside of this moment. Giving yourself the chance to become current with yourself. And now inviting the breath to become more generous. As you receive a deep inhale, allowing the belly to soften open, filling up first, allowing that breath to rise up and expand through the rib cage, filling up to the top of the chest. And as you exhale, let it fall like a wave, the energy as the breath releases, feeling yourself start to slide in and down through the center of your body, down to the base of your spine, to your sit bones. And just pause here for a moment and feel where you are in contact with the surface that is supporting you. And notice if you can give over a little more fully to that support. Feeling a deeper sense of settling in and down, back into yourself. Continuing with these breaths, deep, full inhales, filling up the belly, expanding up through the rib cage and filling up to the chest. Go ahead and pause at the top of the inhale for a moment. Full of breath, feeling that dynamic tension building inside of you. Maybe it begins to illuminate where tension is being held. And exhale with a sigh. And again, feeling that sensation of settling in and down, broadening, melting on the exhale. Letting yourself pause at the end of the exhale to feel that shimmering spaciousness within your skin. And again, receiving a deep breath. Filling up, expanding. Again, suspending at the top of the inhale. Letting the energy build inside of you, encouraging a deeper opening and a deeper release as you exhale. Once again, pausing at the bottom of the exhale. Noticing how you're becoming more spacious internally just with this simple activity of joining your breath and your awareness. And now as you inhale, begin to become aware of energy moving in through the top of your head, flowing in like a current, flowing down into your body, filling your body with fresh new vitality. On the inhale, inspiration. The breath is literally spirit coming into the body. Releasing again, spreading, broadening, softening, relaxing, open, layer by layer. Becoming aware of that current as it pour through the body, that it's nourishing and enlivening every cell. Begin to start to allow yourself to sense the collection of cells, the collection of particles that form the cells that your body actually is. And begin to sense that you can allow them to become ultra receptive, that you're becoming more porous with each breath, and you're allowing them to drink in, actively drinking in and receiving this nourishing current of life force that is flowing in the body. And allowing it to make its way all the way down through the body, cascading like a waterfall, helping to melt on contact any tension that you may be holding, helping it to soften any patterns of rigidity, contraction, willingly giving over to the current, whatever you've been holding on to that is causing an experience of limitation on any level. And let it organically make its way down through the body, pouring out through the palms of the hands, dripping out of the fingertips, pouring down and out through the soles of the feet and into the earth. And giving it over to the earth, allowing her to compost whatever it is that is extraneous, that no longer serves you. This active surrender into the current, actively surrendering whatever you're ready to let go of. And letting each breath, each exhale, notice that you can give over a little bit more and a little bit more, so that there's more space to receive the next inflow of energy on the in-breath. Allowing yourself to be saturated in this luminous nourishment. To be restored in the wholeness that you are in your core, that you have always been, regardless of any of the cloaks of limitation that you've wrapped yourself in at any point. That in any moment you have the choice to let go. That you are always empowered to choose surrender in the face of what challenges you, in the face of where you feel contracted. That those spaces are simply asking for our full presence and our breath. And that you can let it be that simple. And that simplicity is the key that will continually unlock ever finer grain levels of resolution of how much more present you can become in each moment, of how much more fully you can inhabit this precious vessel that you get to exist within, that you get to birth through, that you get to love through, that you get to play with and fully enjoy and treat with the utmost reverence and respect for the gift that you are, for the gift that it is to be here, for the gift that it is to be bestowed with the power to bring forth life and to nourish that life into its fullest expression. So just allowing a few more breaths to be in this energy, to feel the shimmering, pulsating spaciousness within. To feel that current cleansing through you. opening you deeper into yourself, opening you deeper into full contact with life. And so this is where we begin. To first get current with ourselves, to become present inside of this moment, to cultivate a greater degree of spaciousness, to help to clear out the static that keeps us from readily accessing what is most natural and true and here for us in each moment, when we are willing to slow down, to get still, quiet, and listen to that deeper pulse that is always encouraging us to move in, to pay attention, to be with whatever is arising in our experience, and know that no matter what it is, we can handle it, that we are more than capable, that we are designed for this. And so from here, you can open the space for yourself beyond this guided experience to be in the inquiry and in the exploration of what is here, because the space will begin to illuminate wherever we are bound. And so to move towards, to turn towards, to move into, to bring that enfolding presence and the breath into those spaces, to allow them to begin to unravel back into their right place of fluid openness. For these final breaths, I want to invite you to follow the current of energy all the way down through your body. Follow it down through the soles of your feet into the earth. Allowing your awareness to move down through the layers of the earth. Feeling your roots spiraling, sinking, reaching down towards the heart of Gaia, our shared mother. She who makes all of life possible here. And just let yourself rest for a moment here in her embrace, and breathing the feeling tone of appreciation for her, for all that she makes possible. Allowing your energy to settle deeply into her embrace, letting your nervous system ground into the greater body of Gaia. And on your next in-breath, inviting you to begin to allow that current of her nourishment to rise up through these luminous roots, these filaments of light, up towards the soles of your feet. And begin to drink her up as if your legs were straws, just drinking up this nourishment of the mother, the divine feminine. Letting it rise like sap up a tree, up through the legs, up into your root, up into your pelvic bowl, drinking it up through the trunk of your body like a tree, letting it fortify you, strengthen you, all the way up into the neck and the jaw, letting the jaw be relaxed and open, the tongue and the mouth, drinking it up through the head, letting the eyes become soft, resting back into their sockets, letting all of the connection points that hold the eyes in place to also melt and relax. and letting it flow all the way up and out the crown of the head, and let it fountain down around you back into the earth. And just let yourself drink that in for a couple of breaths, that movement of energy rising up and through you, biological nourishment, calming and soothing and grounding, and letting it overflow out the crown of your head, flowing down over the surface of your skin, flowing back down into the earth, nourishing the ground that holds you. Activating all of the wisdom that is completely innate, that is inherent to who you are, built in. Allowing that to begin to transform from a small, quiet whisper in the background to a more lucid and vivid voice that will guide you moment by moment, always towards the path of least resistance and greatest fulfillment in each moment. And making the commitment to choose to listen and respond more and more, so that you create that feedback of experience that allows you to trust ever more deeply the wisdom that is always here for you. Bringing your palms together, allow yourself to rub them vigorously for a moment, generating warmth and stimulating all of the meridian points that end here at the hand. Deeply breathing. And then go ahead and cup your hands over your eyes and allow your eyes to drink this energy in. Again, encouraging them to rest back even more deeply into the sockets as they receive this nourishment. The eyes that take in so much information throughout the day and can often start to create fixed gazes, fixed ways of seeing things. So encouraging a deeper sense of receptive seeing. Releasing the palms. And ever so slowly and gently allowing the eyes to open. And maintaining that soft gaze, that where the eyes are relaxed back and that you can actually invite life in. So rather than looking out, that you're actually becoming more porous and receptive and inviting light and life to come into you and to settle down into the heart and to broaden from here.
Thank you so much. I'm filled with gratitude for your presence and for this gift that I hope many, many, many women will be able to enjoy. Thank you for spending this time with us today. And yeah, I'm just so honored.
Thank you so much, Nancy. It was fun to be here with you, and it was really a delight for me to get to even revisit these experiences and to translate them for the benefit of all of who will receive this. So again, appreciate the opportunity to share.
Thank you. I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day.
Thank you, Nancy. You as well.
Bye.